Joe Harawira is Managing Director of Wai Mānuka, a new brand of non-alcoholic beverage imbued with Mānuka honey, lemon juice and sparkling water. The business's success also rests heavily on the personalities of its founders, along with a commitment to the Māori values of hauoratanga, whanaungatanga and manakitanga. Joe joins me now to talk about his path to entrepreneurship and Wai Mānuka's future. Kia ora, Joe.
Kia ora, Will. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Tell me about Wai Mānuka. I know there's an interesting story about how you and your partners got together and sort of came up with this idea. So tell us about it.
So Wai Mānuka was the brainchild of myself and two good friends. It's a premium non-alcoholic beverage that infuses Mānuka honey with lemon juice and sparkling water. It was actually born from a New Year's Eve idea in 2019, 2020. So sitting around the barbecue with a group of friends and family, and I hardly drink alcohol. So that particular evening I was drinking pineapple kombucha, and it tasted nothing like pineapple. It was kind of gross. And anyway, we started working on solutions and throwing around ideas. And in the early hours of New Year's morning, I think it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, we landed on combining Mānuka honey from Bay of Plenty with spring water from Gisborne, sort of at the time. And then anyway, the next day, New Year's Day, we did a bit of desktop research and we found that actually no one was making this particular type of beverage, and we decided to go all in. So that first lockdown for COVID back in 2020, I think it was in late March, that actually gave us the time and the space to build the business, develop the recipe, and then we also secured the supply agreement to the 36 America's Cup alongside Coke. And so that was our launch to market. And, for us, we consider Wai Mānuka a taonga, or a precious gift and a celebration of the things that people care for, like culture and community.
Mm-hmm. We'll come back to Wai Mānuka in a bit, but I want to go back to the start of your own personal journey and some of the things that you've been through, because you've had a bit of a varied career getting up to that fateful point at New Year's Eve. Tell me about your sort of upbringing and your training and your day job.
I've had a really varied career, actually. So as a teenager, I always wanted to sort of join the army. That was kind of a primary goal. There's something to be said about sort of New Zealand's military in the sense that it's defied the odds throughout history to become regarded as a very highly proficient defence force. And certainly when I was about 15, I sort of dreamt of being able to contribute to that legacy. And to this day, it's been I guess one of the best periods of my life. I got to travel the world, and I worked for both sort of NATO and the UN, and then served alongside some of the finest men and women to wear the uniform. Kind of those experiences, I guess, in the military sort of enabled me to walk with confidence in the civilian world. So after 7 years in the army, I left to go and study towards an undergraduate degree in exercise and sports science. Then I went on to some postgraduate project management and then on to the MBA. And the goal at that time actually was to one day be the chief executive of New Zealand Rugby. However, during the MBA, we went on a global study tour of North America, and it was when we visited Google in Silicon Valley and IDEO in San Francisco that the spark or the interest into sort of entrepreneurship came about. And I remember thinking that it was so amazing to see people take a vision that they have and to be able to bring that to life. And I knew that back then that that's something that I wanted to do. So at the time of doing my MBA, I was in Wellington working for ACC, managing their national sports injury prevention programs. And then the opportunity came up to work for the NRL in the athlete wellbeing space. And essentially the role was about creating a pathway for young athletes to transition into the NRL system. So I worked across all the NRL clubs, preparing our young athletes and their families for the demands of being a professional athlete. That role, I loved it because because of the complexities in dealing with the different countries and the cultures, and there's an element of sport diplomacy, as well as building those relationships. So effectively, I was kind of working with the NRL clubs to I guess create environments that enabled young athletes to thrive both sort of on and off the field. And after 3.5 years in that role, the opportunity came up to work for New Zealand Rugby to lead an area around sort of injury prevention, so player safety. And whilst it was at the time, it was a really tough decision to leave because I enjoyed my time in footy. I knew that it was the right one because in terms of that growth and development, well, that was the next stage. So I spent 5 years at New Zealand Rugby and really enjoyed that role. And, I'd say the thing about sport is that it's made up from people from all walks of life who are emotionally invested and constantly go above and beyond sort of expectations. So you can't help but get pulled along with that to sort of lift your own game and be able to leave the place better for it. And so, for me, that was one of the key things of working in sport. At New Zealand Rugby, I was really fortunate to be part of a high-performing team, sort of focused on one of the key areas within sport, which is that sort of player safety, player welfare kind of area, and also to work within one of the most, I guess, revered national sporting organisations in the world.
In terms of the career progression of yourself, it's a bit of a switch to get into sort of premium FMCG business. How have you found the transition? What kind of mistakes have you made? What kind of successes have you had?
Man, I'd say that we're learning every day, and I'm kind of like a learn by experience type person anyway. So I need to make mistakes to know not to make them again. But in terms of I guess my careers beforehand and the different experiences, I reckon it's been the best preparation towards running an FMCG sort of business. When I think of the MBA, for example, I'm applying the theory that we learnt sort of years ago and putting it into practice. And it's quite funny because people often say that the business Wai Mānuka has taken off so quickly and we must be incredibly happy. And I usually reply with, it's like the overnight success story that took 10 years, because it was 10 years ago that I was in Silicon Valley, seeing Google and in San Francisco, seeing IDEO. So it's hard to sort of connect things sort of looking forward, but looking back, you can certainly see how things have kind of panned out. And then when I sort of reflect on that time within sort of sport and the military, during that time, I was able to develop kind of, attributes like, teamwork and discipline and resourcefulness, which is hugely important in our business, as well as those other wonderful skills like grit and perseverance and resilience, which are, essentially the hallmarks of every successful business.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, it sounds like a fair amount of juggling going on. And I mean, you sort of called yourself the three Māori Boys Limited, and that really sort of imbues the brand that you've got there. How are things going within the team?
Yeah, it's been challenging of late. So we've had a few disagreements with one of the boys, one of the directors. So we're just kind of working out sort of how things are going to play out, I guess, both as a business, both for us as kind of directors and shareholders as well. What I would say, though, is when you look at Wai Mānuka in terms of that provenance story, that still remains. So the provenance story is that we founded it to stay more connected as good friends, and that won't change. Whilst we created it to address the immediate problem of not having a great drink, and we also wanted it to be a celebration of New Zealand, it's the connection and the relationship piece that it's still very much part of that the provenance story, and that's something that'll carry us through. So future's still up in the air as to whether or not we're going to be three Māori boys going forward, but that won't impact on the brand or the business.
For sure, yeah. I'm just wondering whether you have any advice for young entrepreneurs, or especially Māori entrepreneurs, perhaps, who are looking to strike up something and get to a situation where you're at, even though there's still a lot of road ahead of you.
Yeah, sure. So, young Māori entrepreneurs. Well, one statement that we often say within the business is you need to go full manu. So what that means is you have to find a reason to keep pushing through the challenges to create change. So you can't just dip your toe in the water and think everything's going to sweet and everything's going to be sweet and you'll achieve the things that you're wanting. You have to go full manu and you have to do a bomb. So it's all in. Yeah. Kind of the second one we would say is that you got to have fun. Part of Māori culture is to have a laugh and humor and, just to really enjoy yourself. And the thing is, if you're not laughing or smiling more often than you're not, then chances are you're not going to last with what you're doing, and you're probably not going to be enjoyable to be around. So try and find the fun elements. You can even have a laugh when things aren't going right. I mean, we do pretty much every day. So, and then probably the third tip, which is the most kind of topical for us, is that if you are starting a business with whānau and friends, make sure that you've got the correct sort of documents in place right at the beginning. So a constitution and a shareholders agreement, I would say that's an imperative for when you're starting a business with whānau and friends. Get that done first, and then you don't have to worry about it later on.
Top-notch advice. Excellent. Thanks so much for joining me, Joe, and best of luck for the future.
No worries. Thank you very much. Kia ora.